Welcome back. In this episode, we are continuing with Feel Better Fast and Make It Last, and we are talking about Brain XL. We just finished the X Factor on. If you didn't watch it, you should. We ended in a fairly, colorful and slightly tense discussion. And it was actually very interesting, very fun. And I love that about us. We can actually tell each other what we really think. And it's not, we don't always agree, but we
can do
love
it with
each other.
love.
Right. And now we're talking about love.
We get the attachment part.
Right.
All right. So we're going to talk about love. But let's go back to the reviews because we love when you send them in. This is from Lanny Light. This is a great commentary and interview. Thank you so much for sharing this. I've read a book by Tana, Dr. Amen, and you're one of my faves, and you both are among my favorites. Thanks for what you do.
Thank you.
So why is love in Feel Better Fast? Because one of the things I realized is if you're going to get healthy, you can never do it because you should do it. That when people think they should do things, they don't do them.
Well, and you should all over yourself.
So that ultimately love is the secret weapon. Doing the right thing is the ultimate act of love for yourself and for other people.
Should has this rigid feel, and love has this very warm, flexible feel.
And so if you think you shouldn't eat this or you shouldn't do that, you end up eating this and doing that. And just think about it from a biblical sense. God said you shouldn't go to the tree. The next scene in the book of Genesis, they're at the tree. And I'm like, and Eve is tempting Adam.
Well, all you got to do is think of a 2-year-old. Your inner child is a 2-year-old. Think about when you tell your 2-year-old that they can't do something. What are they going to do? They're going to go do it.
You're going to be 50 soon. And if I tell you you can't do something, you
best way to get me to do something is tell me I can't.
That's absolutely correct. And
I'm getting my 2nd degree black belt in a couple weeks because I was told I cannot practice karate. So, just saying. Just making your point.
I have no words. The mindset of a 2-year-old. So God said you shouldn't go to the tree. The next scene, they're at the tree. And I'm like, well, if I was a consultant in the garden, what I would have said is, don't say that. Say, if you go to the tree, she's going to have to wear clothes.
Only you think seriously.
No, it's always think of the consequences.
What will happen? Then what?
Of the behavior. I have this great carving in my office one of my patients gave to me. And it's then what?
Right.
Is if I do this, then what happens? And do I want the consequences of that behavior?
And this is interesting because this is a thing that I've actually gotten in many disagreements with some of my friends who are parents and have kids the same age as Chloe. We don't agree on this because from the time that my daughter turned 12, and this is also a love and logic philosophy, and I agree with it 100%. We love the program, the parenting program, Love and Logic. By the time your kids are 12, you should be coaching them and helping them learn to make their own decisions. And I've never believed in telling Chloe from the time she was about 12 and started middle school what she can and cannot do. Because you tell a middle schooler what they can and cannot do, much like a 2-year-old, they're going to do it, right? They're going to go test it out. And so I just have never done that. I've always believed in telling her specifically, honey, I know you can. Okay, so I'm not going to tell you you can't smoke pot. I'm not going to tell you you can't make out or even have sex, at an early age. I'm just going to tell you what will happen if you do, and then you have to make choices, and those choices are hard. Because if you make adult decisions when you are a child, you have to pay adult consequences, and there's not one thing I can do to protect you from them. I can't protect you from pregnancy. I can't protect you from STDs, and I made sure I showed her pictures very, very graphic pictures.
So you get her into what she wants.
Right.
And then you ask yourself, does your behavior
Right.
get you what you want? So it's not that you shouldn't do it, because then people want to do it.
Well, and I like one thing you say that you do is you say one of the things you've always said is one of your favorite verses is know the truth, and the truth will set you free. So I add to that being very truthful, and you should be very truthful with yourself about what it means.
And so we have a high school course called Brain Thrive by 25. You go to brainthriveby25.com. It's great for middle schoolers, high schoolers, even young adults. And when we teach the class live, invariably a ninth grader, boy, always a boy, will
Girls have too much anxiety.
Will raise his hand and go, so, we're doing these things are bad for the brain. You want to avoid them, right? Because brain health is three things. You got to care about it, avoid things that hurt it, and do things that help it. So when we do the avoid things that hurt it, a boy will raise his hand and go, how can you have any fun? Yep. And so we play a game with them called Who Has More Fun? The kid with the good brain or the kid with the bad brain? Who gets the girl and gets to keep her because he doesn't act like a jerk? The kid with the good brain or the kid with the bad brain? That's why I have you, because other people had acted like jerks and you didn't keep them.
Nope.
And so, that comes from a good brain. Who gets into the college they want to get in? The kid with the good brain or the kid with the bad brain? Who gets the best jobs, makes the most money, has the most meaning and purpose in their life? Is it the kid with the good brain or the kid
and to
with
speak
the
a ninth grader's
bad
language
brain?
takes the best vacations. I mean, you have to speak their language a little bit.
Drives
right?
the coolest cars.
Right.
And so you do the right things, not because you should, but because you want the consequences of doing the right things. And how many people have said, living the way you live on the Brain Warriors way, well, that's hard. And we're like, it's not hard.
Not if you've been sick. And here's the thing.
It's not hard. It's easy. And it gets you what you want.
Right.
Which is health, which is energy, which is vitality. And ultimately, it's not just about loving you, because we know your habits turn on or off certain genes that make illness more or less likely, yes, in you, but also in your
and if you're paying
babies and your
attention, every time I
grandbabies.
start to veer off course just a little bit, like I said before, when I had surgery and I veer off course a little bit, I instantly feel the pain of not feeling well that I used to feel. I mentioned that depression is the worst thing I've ever been through. Well, for me, I will do anything to avoid going back to that dark place. And the second I start to feel that brain fog coming on, that fatigue, which happens when I veer off course, I'm like, no, okay, nothing is worth that. Eating healthy is a small price to pay. So that actually is not hard. What's hard is feeling awful and not having energy. So it's you feel it pretty quickly.
So I never want you in the should place. I should do this, I should do that, where I feel bad about eating healthy. I want you there because you love yourself. You love your wife. You love your children. You love your mission. You love your purpose. Stay with us. We're going to talk about 4 Greek words for love and how that might apply to you. Welcome back. Feel better fast. Make it last. Brain Excel. You got to get your brain right, your rational mind right, your attachments, your inspiration, your nutrition. We talked about the lessons from imaging, the X factor, and now we're talking about love. My favorite topic, especially when I'm hanging out with you. And the way you guys love us is by writing reviews of the podcast. And 2, quickly, from Monty Kaiser, wow, it's good to hear that other people go through this stuff too. So, being real, and this is from Oliver. Thank you very much for this wonderful podcast. Hypnosis series coming from a Christian perspective. I was very skeptical about hypnosis, especially because Christians are supposed to be vigilant and very careful when relaxing and giving up control. Your talk helped me a lot to see hypnosis from another perspective.
See, I don't understand that. To me, I feel like when you practice meditation and hypnosis, that is you controlling you controlling your moods, your psyche without, because we all struggle, right? I don't understand that perspective. I mean, I understand where it's coming from. I just don't understand why, because that is you taking control of the outcome of how you're feeling without relying on medications, without being subject to the outside world. So I'm a little confused by that.
Well, and it's about how people don't really understand that hypnosis is not being under someone's
Like, I would never go to
spell,
someone I don't trust anyways. So why would you?
that it's teaching your brain to get into a natural state of healing.
But I always pray first anyway. So, but I wouldn't, why would you go to someone you don't trust? So that doesn't, I don't know. I'm a little confused by that. But anyways.
So let's talk about 6 different types of love. The Greeks have 4 words for love, but C.S. Lewis, one of my favorite authors, talks about need love and gift love. And brain health is both of those. You need to do it, because if your habits aren't right, it puts you at risk for anxiety, depression, cognitive impairment, pain, a lack of focus, and so on. So I would argue you need to do this. And gift love is by doing this for yourself, you're modeling a better life for your children, for your grandchildren, for your coworkers, for your employees. And it's about love. Now, the Greeks had 4 words for love. Storge, love, which is affectionate love between family members. So husband and wife, mother and child, father and daughter, father and son. Phileo, which is love between friends. And Philadelphia, is the city of brotherly love. Eros, which is passionate love. And agape, which is selfless love. It's really the highest form of love.
Right.
And as I was thinking about that, is doing the right thing applies to all 6 of these forms of love. I need to do it so I stay healthy. When I do the right thing, I model it for those people around me. So it's good for my family, storge. It's good for my friends, phileo, and people get better together, right. They get sick together.
So community.
It's totally good for eros, for passion.
Right.
And close your ears, because you don't like when I talk about this. But one of the most common things my male patients tell me when they get on the plan is their erections are better.
Why don't I'm a nurse. Why would you say I don't like when you talk about it?
Because you think I'm obsessed with sex.
Well, I do think you're obsessed with sex, but I mean, that's just a fact. I mean, we do have some things that are just like, I'm a nurse, so.
Well.
Not like I don't.
When you're married to a smoking hot woman.
Okay, that's where you describe. See, you cross the line from like talking about things from a technical standpoint on the podcast over the line like that. You do it every time.
Sorry.
You just never stick with it.
Beautiful women make you stupid. You know that. So it's good for your
Beautiful
sex
women
life.
do not make me stupid.
I am not going there. I'm not even going to go there at all.
Just don't. I didn't even. Okay, never mind. Moving on.
Agape love, selfless love. The highest form of love is doing the right thing because it's good for the planet. And we actually didn't talk about soul food under nutrition.
Oh, I
But
like
it's
that.
a term I came up with, that you want it sustainable, unadulterated, organic, and locally grown.
Oh, how interesting. Yeah.
So when you make the right choices for your food, it's about love. And do you remember this when you taught the Brain Warriors Way course, that a woman took it and she was overweight, and I think it was lesson 2, she started crying in the class. And the reason that she started crying is that she thought she was treating her children with sweets.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that story? Do you want to tell it?
Well, I'm confusing it because when I was teaching Omni, the same thing happened, but it was about halfway through the course. So it's happened a couple of times, actually. It's not an uncommon thing to happen. Not sure which one you're referring to, but similar things happen. So I'm gonna pick one of them. I remember Alicia coming in. She was like, she got really angry and then she broke out into tears, and she came in and she said she was upset. And I'm like, why? What's going on? I thought she was upset about something in the course. And she said, no, I'm angry because all this time I thought that I was doing the right thing. Every time my kids would do something well, we would go out for ice cream. We would go out for, a treat. We'd go out and we'd buy candy, or we'd go to, get something. It was always food driven. And she said, it never crossed my mind that by doing that, I was hurting my children. And she said, and now my children are suffering the same health problems that I have. They are overweight. They are, they have brain fog. They've got these problems that I have. They've got the same health issues that are developing that I have. And she said, and I feel this guilt now that I understand. And she said, and I'm like, okay, so what's the good news about that? She's like, well, I'm changing how I see treats. I'm changing how I see celebrating victories. And I'm going to start planting that with my children. And they did. They started doing these amazing things as a family, going for hikes and bike rides and spending time together, but in a healthy way. So
I was watching, I don't know, we haven't talked much about it on the podcast, but I'm a huge Lakers fan. And we had season tickets for a number of years.
I remember this.
And I was watching a new documentary. It was called Love, a basketball story. And Shaquille O'Neal was on and talked about how his father, who was a police officer, was actually fairly abusive to him. And that,
He's just not someone I'd be abusive to.
Belittle him and say really hurtful things. And he would cry. And his grandmother would give him pound cake and ice cream as a way to soothe him. And then
my grandmother did something similar.
You can tell years later that, he really struggled with his weight, because the message he got about love was attached to food. So very much like Alicia, or like what your grandmother would do.
The warm, fresh Syrian bread with just dripping with butter, and then she put honey or a little bit of sugar on it. Oh, that's crazy.
Right. But she ended up with diabetes, and she was obese, and it was not a good thing for her. And so how are you loving the people in your life? Mm-hmm. Are you loving them with things that hurt them, or are you loving them with things that help them? Because really what children want is not sugar. I mean, yes, they want sugar, but that's not what they really want. They want your time.
Right.
And so going for a walk with them, playing games with them, talking to them, or what you've done with Chloe for years and years, reading with them.
I was at the nail salon with Chloe just yesterday, and the lady goes, "Oh, are these together?" And I'm like, "Yeah. Someday, maybe she's going to treat me, but for now, it's still on me." And she goes, "You're always here with your daughter." And I said, "No, yeah." I said, she hangs out with me all the time. I'm like, I can't, I'd have to push her to go hang out with her friends. She looked at me funny, and she goes, "I have teenagers." She goes, "Your daughter wants to hang out with you?" And I said, "Yeah, she always wants to hang out with me." She goes, "Isn't that a little weird?" So it was just a funny way she said it. She goes, "How did you do that?" like I did some kind of voodoo on my daughter. It's because I just always spent time with her. I mean, that's the only thing. It's just I spent time with her and I listened to her. Even when it was hours upon hours of things that were just senseless to me, like Justin Bieber, that made no sense. I just listened. And so now she, that left that opening for her to always come to me and talk.
Doing the right thing is about love. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're talking about love from Feel Better Fast and Make It Last. Another review we got, food addiction. This is Elite Sucka. That's an interesting name. Elite Sucka. Food addiction can be very subtle. God bless you guys for this very informative video on food, depression, and good nutrition. Well, you are welcome. I want to start this podcast with a story. And do you remember when we started doing the Daniel Plan with Saddleback Church? And,
I do.
I gave a lecture on food and how to eat in order to serve your health and the health of your family.
Fulfill your purpose. Yeah.
And a couple of weeks later, I had a woman, one of the pastor's wives, come in my office and like I'm doing today, I'm drinking tea because I drink a lot of tea. And I'm drinking tea, getting to know her. And she said, could you put the tea down? And in my head, I'm like, that's weird. But, I'm generally pretty compliant, right? I'm generally pretty compliant.
Yeah.
And so I put the tea down, wondering what is going to happen next.
Yeah. So you're not, I'm suspicious.
Like,
he's not.
Why did you want me to do that? She said, I didn't want you to spit it at me. I'm thinking to myself, I've never spit tea at anybody. And she said, when I heard you talk on the way home from the lecture, I told my husband I would rather get Alzheimer's disease than give up sugar. And I'm like,
we've heard a lot of weird things about people
I wasn't
giving up
going
sugar.
to spit the tea at her. I would not have done that, I promise. But my next comment to her was, did you date the bad boys in high school? And she goes, what do you mean? I said, clearly you have a bad relationship with sugar, that you're in love with something that's pro-inflammatory, that's addictive, that makes you stupid and fat. So you're in an abusive relationship with sugar. And she never thought about that. And ultimately, she ended up breaking up with sugar.
You always say it's so much nicer than I do. I just look at people, I'm like, why would you want to be with something that like beats the hell out of you? So just like beating the crap out of you. Like, I just have never understood that. Like, someone did that to me, I would tear it apart. But, I'm a little different.
Have you ever been in a bad relationship?
Oh, yeah. And someone puts their hands on me, it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing.
What was that like?
Sometimes it starts off subtly, and it's insidious, right? And that's the problem with sugar. It's insidious. So you don't see it coming. And that's where it's hard. And by the time it happens, it's sometimes you're like already in, and you have to like figure out how to get out of it, right? And that's where sugar is tricky. For me,
well, no, let's stay with relationships for
right.
Now. Because once you make love to someone else, they actually become to live in the pleasure centers of your brain. So once you get
and it's insidious
attached
right.
to other people, it's really hard to break, even if they're abusive to you.
Right. But we all have different reactions. Now, if someone puts their hands on me, it's like, that's different. Some people just cower and they take it.
Yeah, but you and I have both been when, we do the history of our relationships, and got some bad relationships that were clearly not good, but we ended up staying way too long because you get attached,
Right.
right? And thankfully,
Just
we're
not
in the best relationship of our lives,
right.
and we cherish it and protect it. But I'm not going to be in a bad relationship
No,
anymore.
especially not a
And I'm
physically
damn
abusive
sure
one.
not going to pay for it
Mm-mm.
with food, right? And so I want you to think about your relationship with food, with products in a loving way.
So I was actually sort of making a point. So it's insidious, like the emotional abuse is insidious, and that's what sugar does too. It kind of makes you depressed. Before you realize it, it's actually affecting you emotionally. And but what for me, it's a physical, like when someone crosses over the line into physical abuse, it's a trigger for me. And that's like that's a no-go. Like one of us is going to get seriously hurt. So it's like that's a line you don't cross. And so it's like that feeling you just like I don't see red, I feel red. And it's going to end right there. That's what sugar does. So the mental part of it, the emotional part of it's pretty insidious. You don't sort of see it coming at first. But in the meantime, it's physically just beating the hell out of you. Why would you let someone do that to you? Anything. And sugar has no place occupying the same part of your brain that when people say, "Oh my God, I love it so much, I can't give it up." Why would you let it occupy the same place in your brain that your child does or that someone you love occupies? That doesn't make sense to me. So that's for me when it was like clear. It's like,
And
oh,
so many people go, I love bread, I love wine, I love sodas, I
right.
love fries, I love donuts, and they can't imagine their lives without those things because they've allowed their pleasure centers to be hijacked by processed foods
Well, part of it wasn't
that
their
make
fault.
other
And part of it was not their fault.
correct.
But now that you know,
Once you know,
right.
you can do better. Know better, do better. When you're about to eat something, ask yourself, does this serve me or does it hurt me? We're habitual creatures. The more you allow yourself to do something that's not good for you, the more you will do something that is not good for you.
Mm-hmm.
The more you do something that is good for you, the more you will want to do that. So you're building positive habitual tracks in your brain, or you're building negative habitual tracks in your brain. I would go for the positive.
Mm-hmm.
Stay with us. Welcome back. We're so happy you're with us. We're doing Brain XL, and we're coming to the end of L. We're going to do love. We're going to love you back by answering some of your questions. But before we get to that, Ellen McCarthy said, "This is such an informative and helpful podcast that you, Tana, and Dr. Amen are doing. I am a child of an alcoholic, and this is encouraging me to considering getting treatment at your clinics." Well,
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Ellen. And we wish you the best. Children of alcoholics have, there's genetic vulnerabilities because that stuff tends to run in families, tends to go with depression and ADD. And there's emotional issues that go along with that. But getting your brain right is the first step to getting your life right. Mm-hmm. Okay. Quickly, can you do a podcast about PTSD, childhood sexual trauma, and how it's treated? Would that be helped with hypnosis and or EMDR? I'm curious because of past personal experience from trauma.
I know we have done several podcasts on PTSD. We should do probably an updated one, a new one, and specifically relate it to childhood sexual trauma.
So when you're traumatized early, it resets your brain to a higher level. And
no.
Yes. And then people do all sorts of things to try and calm it down. And it can be weed, it could be alcohol.
It could be karate.
It can be things that are really good for you or things that are not good for you. EMDR is really helpful.
So helpful. I mean, I did it for 2 years.
There's actually amazing. A brand new study out on eye movements, getting your eyes to move left, right. So bring up the trauma, think about it, and then do the eye movement for about a minute. And a new study showed it actually helped calm down the amygdala, which is the area of your brain that actually feels anxiety and fear.
Yeah, I did it for 2 years, and I found it incredibly helpful.
Is there a wrong or right way to do hypnosis? Can you also call it meditation?
For me, they're sort of connected, and I know they're slightly different, but I've sort of the way that I do it, I connect them a little bit. So, I mean, you're probably better at answering whether they're different or not. I just find that it's helpful to I do sort of a self-hypnosis, and I connect it to my meditation.
They're actually very similar.
Yeah.
And it's similar to guided imagery.
Right.
One is sort of directed, they both can be directed by other people. And they both can be directed by yourself. One, it puts you in a trance-like state, but meditation states are very much trance-like states. So I would say they're very similar.
I have a bunch of them on my site. You have a bunch. We have a bunch on Brain Fit Life to help you get started.
Another one. I wonder if there's anyone you can recommend for hope and help with mental issues. If we are in Wales, the United Kingdom, and cannot bring a client to the USA, we need to go beyond what the National Health Service has offered after 14 months in mental health for true recovery. Please help.
Ouch.
We actually have a number of brain health coaches around the world where we teach our method to other people. And if you're a professional, if you go to brainhealthcoaching.com, you can learn about it. You can get 50 units of continuing medical education, which is monstrous. More importantly, you can learn the method we use here at Amen Clinics to help people.
So if you go to our website, you'll see where our professionals are at around the world.
Another question. I noticed that when I take Concerta, which is a stimulant that people often prescribe for ADD, I become depressed after a couple of weeks.
Oh, interesting.
What do you think would be a good supplement to counteract that? I need some ideas to take to my doctor. So one, take it to your doctor. Whenever I hear that, I wonder if there's not an underlying mood disorder that Concerta is triggering off. And so go to our brain health assessment. It's free. Go to brainhealthassessment.com. See what your type is. And you may either be 4, which is sensitive, or 2, which is spontaneous, or maybe a combination of those 2. And sometimes SAMe can be really helpful to actually help your mood and help concentration. So I'm a huge fan of SAMe. If you take SAMe, also take it with betaine, trimethylglycine. They've found that they work synergistically. Um, can undiagnosed diabetes contribute to symptoms similar to borderline personality disorder?
Well, if your blood sugar is not being balanced, for sure it can be problematic. Can certainly increase things like depression.
But usually with diabetes, it's high blood sugar,
Yeah.
not low
So
blood
it depends
sugar.
on what's going on.
But if you have low blood sugar, you can have episodes that
But
you're
I'm wondering, by the
emotionally.
way, they're asking that. Oh, it's undiagnosed. Never mind. I was thinking if they were taking diabetic medication.
Yeah, and I would say, that's not
That's
a
probably
combination
not
I see
it.
together.
No.
High blood sugar is clearly bad for you.
One thing that is often misdiagnosed as bipolar, it's a little bit different. PCOS is often those 2. They
So
see a lot
explain
of
that.
polycystic ovarian syndrome because of the hormonal imbalance that happens with polycystic ovarian syndrome. You're kicking me. Do you have to say something?
No, I just want you to know how it feels to be kicked at.
Because of the hormonal imbalance that happens with polycystic.
She kicks me like all the time.
He's like this. Okay. Anyways, because of the hormonal imbalance that happens with polycystic ovarian syndrome, with your female hormones being out of balance, as well as testosterone, now you become testosterone dominant. And it causes this problem. You're also insulin resistant. So lots of issues going on with your hormones. And all of a sudden, a lot of times it's not diagnosed properly. You're not diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome, but because of the radical mood swings and the testosterone dominance, sometimes people are misdiagnosed as bipolar. There are several studies on that.
And when you and I were first together, you had PCOS.
I did. I'd never been diagnosed with something like that. But what you used to make fun of me and say is the only time I scared you was when I acted like a girl. So I didn't have the bipolar part. I was just very driven and intense. So you're like, the only time you scared me is when you act like a girl.
And
I'm still a little driven.
And when you got it balanced, you went from wanting a big killer dog to Tinkerbell.
I'm back to wanting my German Shepherds, although the Shepherd I got is completely worthless. But anyways, so
he's not worthless. Why would you say that?
No, he's worthless for anything except love. Totally worthless.
Well, I'm all for that.
He's not a protection.
I have enough killers.
He's not a protection dog at all.
All right. According to conventional medicine psychiatry, too much dopamine gives you psychosis. What do you think of that?
Kind of needs to be balanced, doesn't it?
Well, what are conditions that give you too much dopamine? If you
cocaine.
Start taking too much cocaine, can you get psychotic if you take too much cocaine?
You won't sleep.
You certainly can get psychotic.
Meth.
And when we give dopamine blockers, like Risperdal or Zyprexa or Thorazine,
because you don't have enough dopamine.
But it's way more complicated
than
that. And you want to keep dopamine balanced so that you feel happy.
Because without it, you're
motivated.
like super unmotivated and depressed.
Well, and the real serious low dopamine state is you get Parkinson's disease.
Right.
And when we block dopamine too much, you get a Parkinsonian syndrome where you actually develop tremors.
Don't you remember when I was going through treatments for my thyroid thing, the wired tired thing I had, and then all of a sudden I would just feel like someone pulled the plug. And we sort of figured out it was dopamine. I would just be like, whoa, like just, but I think it was that because I was so revved all the time and then I just crashed. But dopamine can make you really not feel good if it's low or if it's too high.
2 more questions. What are the acceptable, safety, helpful games for a 10-year-old boy who is anxious? This is a grandmother who is watching, learning, and grateful to you and Tana for the last 12 years.
See, I would say anything that you do with, like board games are great. Anything you do with them. Like we play family games together, board games. You know, we're still one of those weird families. Even though my daughter's 15, we're still one of those families that plays board game. My daughter loves that we play board games together. They hate, well, you like playing Scrabble with me. But we like playing card games. We like playing board games. I don't know if she's talking about video games or not.
Well, so we wouldn't be a fan of video games because they're fairly addictive. But when you think of sports, so we should talk a little bit about sports, that we're huge fans of track. Right. But not pole vaulting, right? Not things that put them at risk.
Water polo is pretty...
water polo has a lot of head trauma.
Does it really?
A lot.
So swimming then?
Swimming can be good, but not diving. Lots of head trauma.
Okay, so swimming.
With diving.
Basketball.
Golf is good.
Tennis.
Basketball. Tennis. Table tennis, obviously, is my favorite. Dance is really great.
And I love saying karate, except that now the culture in many studios is more aggressive. I mean, where I train, it's not so much, but I mean, it actually is in a lot of places. So you have to be very careful if you're going to train in martial arts, where you train and how you train. Because it's really good for the brain. The complex moves both sides of the body, the more traditional types of martial arts. But the new, more MMA is not so good.
And the last question, can you tell us more about your trip to Greece?
Oh, I've not stopped hearing about the food. Still.
It was amazing. It was incredible. We went to Corinth.
Corinth was interesting. Yeah.
It was really interesting.
That's where my favorite
the
meal was.
Acropolis at Corinth is larger than the Acropolis in Athens.
It's like a city on top of a mountain. It's crazy how big it is.
I'm grateful we didn't have to hike it. We could drive up to the top.
Yeah, it was crazy.
But then you still had to hike another mile up in the air. It was beautiful.
They're struggling still. So it's a place steeped with history, and I love history. And it's sad to see them still struggling so much.
So the old city is beautiful. The Plaka.
Plaka is great. It's great. And I love all the sites.
And the food is awesome, and the history's wonderful, and the coastline's beautiful. But there's a lot of poverty. And
they're struggling with a lot of, issues that they've had economically and with the government. And so you'll see that if you go there. But
so
you love
write
history.
more, write your questions. We're happy to answer them. We hope you've really loved this series on Feel Better Fast, and would dearly love for you to buy the book. And when you do, if you go to feelbetterfast.com, you can download the introduction and chapter 1 immediately. You can also download some free audios we do for you, along with Tana's brand new cookbook, The 10-Day Brain Boost. Stay with us. Use the code podcast10 to get a 10% discount on a full evaluation at amenclinics.com or on our supplements at brainmdhealth.com. Thank you for listening to the Brain Warriors Way podcast. Go to iTunes and leave a review, and you'll automatically be entered into a drawing to get a free signed copy of the Brain Warriors Way and the Brain Warriors Way cookbook we give away every month.